Hey folks, welcome back. One of the great things about this show is getting to meet people from all different walks of life, technology, business, society, as well as different time zones. So I'm very pleased today to be joined by Lynn Yap, who will tell us in a minute where she's dialing in from, if I can use those words. But it's great to connect hands across the sea and all that. Welcome to the studio, Lynn.
Thank you very much for having me, Graham. It's a pleasure to be
So,
here.
where are you based?
Well, I am dialing in from Barcelona. The business
Hmm.
is the business is based in New York, but I'm dialing in from Barcelona today.
But there's a long journey there, isn't there? I don't know if we're going to be able to cover it all today. Barcelona, New York. There's also a little bit of a reroute through Germany, several places in Europe, and you're originally from.
Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia.
How about that? It's amazing.
Yes.
You are an internationalist, so I'm looking forward to these next 10 minutes. Are you ready, Lynn?
Yes, let's go for it.
Okay, so we'll start at the top. Your business card, what does it say?
Well, it usually says Ambassador for Social Impact, but most recently, a couple of months ago, I published my first book, The Altruistic Capitalist. So I have a second title now, which says author.
Excellent. And how long was that book in the making?
I have to say about a year. So this
Mm,
started at the start of the pandemic, where what I usually do is work with schools, and because schools were all shut down due to COVID, I took the opportunity then to write this book that people have asked me to in the last few years. Like, Lynn, when are you
mm,
going to write that book? So when schools shut down and I couldn't do my other projects, I thought, well, good time as any to start writing this
mm.
book.
So it was a book that was waiting to be born. It was there. It was being written over years and years in your mind and through your experience and conversations, but having the time because of the pandemic gave you that bandwidth to get it done. Where did the genesis of the idea for altruistic capitalist come from?
It is a difficult word, I've been
Yeah, you
told.
got me there.
It's a little bit of a mouthful, I've been told. Uh, so the idea of the altruistic capitalist came from my business experience, really. I have a very traditional business background. I graduated from the University of Nottingham in law. So my first job
Mm,
was actually as a lawyer, as a corporate attorney. And then I moved on into investment banking, did my MBA at the Wharton School in the US. And then I went into innovation and brand strategy. So I have quite a traditional business background. Now, but as I'm analyzing all the financial statements and looking at our strategy, what was missing for me is what is the impact that businesses have on people and the planet.
mm,
And so I guess it started a few years ago where I invested more of my personal time to increase the inclusion of women in technology and innovation, because this was an area that I was quite familiar with, and I didn't see enough women in that. So
mm,
I started working with schools to increase the women in, to increase the number of girls who would be interested to go into technology and innovation. Thereafter, I thought, well, why not turn it into a business? Because it really started as a volunteer and a thing that I would do in a part time. So, long story short, I took my business background, I took my experiences in turning what we can call like a passion project into a business and put it into a book. But I
mm.
didn't just take my experience. I also had because of the pandemic, interviewed a bunch of leaders. I interviewed 50 odd leaders across Europe and US, and took their wisdom and leadership knowledge and put it into this book.
Hmm. Well, I'm going to ask you in a minute what is the story that you want to tell with this book. But my personal curiosity is that I want to ask you, where were you educated? Because I'm curious to know where your accent came from. I know you were born in Malaysia,
Hmm.
but often, unless you've been educated in an English speaking country, you don't get rid of the accent. Often that's the case. Where did you study? I know you've told me about Nottingham and Wharton as well, but before that, were you raised in Malaysia?
I was. I
Hmm.
spent my first 19 years in Kuala Lumpur
Wow.
in a public government school.
There you
Hmm.
go. It's
Yes,
quite
but
rare. I mean, I was an English teacher for my sins many, many years ago, and I taught English in Japan. It's extremely rare, not just in Japan, but for people to lose an accent and to inherit a very localized accent as well. but it's there. So I was just tuning into that. So I was wondering, did you sort of grow up in the States? As you know, there are many people that do, born in one country, grew up somewhere else, and they have the American accent. So
Do I have an American accent or a
no,
British
you have an
accent?
interesting mix. There's a bit of an English accent mixed with American in there as well. So, when people say certain words, it comes out in an American way. Or if you say Germany, you'll say it like a German will say it in English as well. Those kind of things. So it's fascinating because you've inherited that in your head. So, all right. Well, that's a little bit of a side story there, but I guess it kind of builds up into the story that you're trying to tell here. Your superpower as an author, what you're writing with this book, what is the story that you want to tell?
If I may say it in one sentence, I think if we all act with intention, know where we are going, I think the world would be a better place. So whether that is that as individuals or that as or whether we're acting as part of businesses, if we are intentional about who we buy from and know who we buy from, who we work with, understand what are the practices and the cultures behind that business, and also knowing where do we put our money? Who do we invest in? Do we support such businesses? Do we support their practices and the way they run their business, their supply chain practices? If we are intentional about that, I think we can each individually make an impact. I think another way us as individuals can make an impact is to recognize that we have a power that we can speak up. If we share the word with another person, with our neighbor, someone in the family, over at the dinner table, we have the responsibility and the duty to leave the world a better place. Even thinking about what legacy is it that you want to leave behind, I think we can turn things around, we can shift things, and actually make a positive difference in terms of what we see related to inequality and climate change. Both things I think are critical tipping points.
Does that come at a cost, though, to put in a very short-termist mindset onto it? For example, at the most basic level, when people became aware of provenance, or where do I buy, or what am I buying, and where does it come from? When people would eat food, choose organic versus inorganic foods, it came at a cost, didn't it? So you could make that choice, but there was a cost associated with it. Is it the same with everything, for example, that, if I'm going to ask these questions and act with intention, I have to be prepared to pay the price for it? What's the reality?
I think the cost comes either way. You either pay for it today or you pay for it tomorrow. And I think if we act with intention, we think more in the longer term, because somebody has to pay for it. Current generation, we have acted more in a short term, thinking of, well, what is the short term profit? We want to grow year after year. But that means we're depleting resources a lot quicker than we are regenerating and redistributing assets. And what that means is the future generation pays for it. Your children's generation and generation after will pay for it. So it's a cost. It's just who pays for it.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess before, we weren't aware of it. We weren't aware that there was a cost, or it was something that we didn't talk about. And therefore, only recently have we become aware of the longer term costs, because obviously it's long term, so we need time to really see it where we are today in Canada, for example, with the heat dome that's creating 50 degrees Celsius temperatures in Canada. That came from somewhere. That wasn't random as well. So there's a lot that takes time to realize that actually that came from decisions we've made and acting without intention, I guess, years before. So why did you choose capitalism as well? Because some people may argue that if, for example, the capitalist model is one that desires profits, then the very act of desiring profits itself will create costs for other people. Did you not see some kind of uneasy relationship between altruism and capitalism? Do they work well together?
There are a couple of questions in that. I'm going to unpack it one by one. So I do have a business background, and I do believe in capitalism. I'm also a technologist. I believe in technology. Both capitalism and technology are just tools, and it is what we as individuals choose to do with it that make it good or bad to put a label on these things. Capitalism inherently has a push and pull force which balances the market. It creates healthy competition that therefore results in innovation, better products to meet the needs of the market. So I think inherently capitalism is good. It's just what how we've used a tool that's led to short-term thinking and greed. And the reason why I put altruism and capitalism in the same sentence in a title, because I wanted to challenge people to think, well, capitalism is what people think at the moment is all about greed. It's very selfish, and altruism is complete opposite. So wanting to shift people's thinking about how we think about business, because we have a choice and there is a different way to do things.
And we can exercise that choice, right?
We can.
For
we always have a
yourself, Lynn,
choice.
absolutely. And that's what it's about, making those decisions in a conscious way. Your journey with this book, what do you know now about your craft, if you like, your subject area? I mean, obviously you studied in law and you studied an MBA as well. So you have the practical knowledge. But what do you know now about actually doing the book, completing the book that you didn't know when you started it? I'm always curious about those kind of revelations or maybe even surprises that came out of it.
Yes. Very good question, Graham. I guess I didn't realize how much work is involved in producing a book. There's not just the writing, because it's understanding the whole marketing journey, the whole publishing journey as well. So there are a lot of pieces that go into it that I'm grateful to have a publisher who helped put the marketing editors, the cover design, the layout editors. There were so many people involved. I just thought, I'll write a book, but I did not really understand all the pieces that would come to it. So that's the more practical, operational side of things. But from a more personal perspective, I think what I realized was, what I discovered was my own voice and having the courage to write and publish, because there is that final step before you push the imaginary publish button and say, all right, I'm ready to go live now. That is a little bit scary, because as a writer, you are exposed. You are exposing yourself to criticism, to judgment. And in every book and every piece of writing, and I still write on a weekly basis, every piece of writing that goes live, there's a little piece of me. And that exposes me. It makes me feel very naked. I think a lot of writers feel that way too. So I think just having that courage in your own voice has been one of the biggest growing experiences in my professional journey.
Yeah, wonderful. What a great way of putting it as well. And people only benefit when people like yourself step up and do that. It's a brave move as well, because it's easy to stay within your comfort zone. But like you say, it's the vulnerability, isn't it? That's what real leadership is now as well. So Lynn, thank you for coming on the show and sharing with us a little bit of your journey as well. I know it's much more extensive, your journey, and we're just getting the tip of the iceberg with this book as well. Where would people go to find out more about you?
People can go to altruisticcapitalist.com. That is the website for the book. And you can also find my email there. It is lynn@altruisticcapitalist.com. I'm also on Instagram as Altruistic Capitalist. So pretty easy, Altruistic Capitalist.
You are from the world of branding and marketing after all. So there you go. Lynn Yap, everybody. Lynn, thanks for joining the show today. Really appreciate that.
Thank you very much.